A lot of people say knowledge is power, but I feel like for a specific group of us, knowledge is suffering. And Ecclesiastes said this, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 18, it says for which something like it says something along the lines of for with much wisdom comes much sorrow, right? Um, and Ecclesiastes in itself is a very interesting book because like when you read it, it gets to this conclusion of one, everything is meaningless, and two, um, at the end of the matter, love God, follow his commandments, that's the duty of man. And it sounds trite. I don't know if that's the right word, but it sounds like, really? That's it? Um, but I think it's the best conclusion to every philosophy I can think about. Now, I've not read too much. I read a bit. And I've, trying to understand the world from like different perspectives, from like Christian theology and Buddhism and Eastern philosophy and atheism. Like I engage mentally with all these different arguments. And it's done two things. One is it makes me believe in the validity of the Bible, and I'll talk about that later. But it also just really shows me, um, yeah, the suffering that comes with knowing, right? Because we think that the more we know, the better off we are, and sometimes yes, but I think in a lot of times the more you know, it's like being handed a very very dangerous weapon, right? If you do not have the capacity to wield it, you can kill yourself. You can put others in harm's way. And I feel like that. I feel like starting like maybe 3 years ago, like I've always been thirsty for knowledge, and I've poured my life into learning. But I think from like about 3 years ago, I started getting a new um, understanding, and the biggest one just being my illusion of control of my life was broken. Right, I came up in a system that preached for the most part cause and effect, and for a while, it believed like I believed that was it, and I got very cocky according to my wife. And I feel like God was like, yeah, you have to sit down, like be humble, right? And that got me to a point of like my illusion of control being broken, and that set me on this journey of understanding life at a much deeper level. But the thing that has come with it is the more I know, the harder my life gets, right? Because for every decision, for every action, I can argue every side. And if you pair that with the fact that I have a very hyperactive mind, it's extremely crippling. Now, in my work as a coach, it's a blessing, right? Because then when I'm sitting across the table from someone, I have this levels and layers of depth that I can sort of offer them, right? Different perspectives that they never will get to themselves. And that works great as a borrowed tool. But as a consistent frame of life, it's very difficult. Um, it's almost like I was telling them this morning. It's almost like I feel like I'm on the fourth floor, so my view of the world is completely different from somebody who's on the first floor, right? So when somebody comes to me for a coaching session and we're having a conversation, I can kind of share that fourth floor perspective with them, and it's a borrowed perspective, right? They can take it as a tool, but then pretty much they're still on the first floor, right? They might get a little understanding, but they're very much on the first floor. Most people rarely ever climb floors. I think most people borrow perspectives from different floors and use them, right? But once you truly get to a certain floor, it's almost impossible to, what's the word? Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like once you understand that, like control is an illusion, you can't pretend like it's not. And that makes your life very difficult. At least it makes mine very difficult when it comes to decision making and moving. Because you can't argue the very blind, simple points that you would argue in the past, for if you don't know any better. But once you know more, you lose that ability, right? And it's a very interesting frame to live in. Definitely very challenging. Something I've been working through. Like I said, I consider it an act of mercy. So it's interesting some days, frustrating most of the time, but it's definitely fun and exciting and fulfilling if I now get to sit across from somebody and offer them that perspective, right, about life. Like for example, I had a masterclass it's like a workshop a couple of 2 weekends ago, and we're talking about emotions. And this was me, a guy, talking to a room full of women about emotions. It was a little crazy. The minute the words came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh my God, I just set myself up. But it was interesting to see the reactions that came from that conversation, like to see how it impacted people and to see the many different ways like a singular presentation actually created varied responses for people in their different use cases. That's the joy of being on the fourth floor or being on the high level floor. But when it comes to your own life, it can be extremely crippling, right? Now, What has this got to do with the Bible? Two things. One, I think that conclusion in Ecclesiastes, like I said, is one of the best, right? Which is, at the end of the day, everything is meaningless. Like every pursuit of meaning will bring you to the same sense of meaninglessness, because meaning is not this, at least like meaning the way the human mind tries to conceive of it. It's not this static objective thing, right? I'm not saying truth, I'm saying meaning. So when you pursue it, however, you will find that it changes based on the context. What I find meaningful, somebody finds completely useless. What might be meaningful to me in one season is not meaningful in the other. What might be meaningful in one experience is completely meaningless in the other, right? So if it can't be this objective thing, if it can shift around so much, then trying to pursue it is really hard, right? So which is why I think the writer of Ecclesiastes was saying, because he's had it all, right? Had the women, I believe it's Solomon, I'm not sure, but he's had the women, had the money, had the fame, built a kingdom, has been rich, seen it all, and it's like it's still meaningless, right? It's just like chaff in the wind. So when people make the claim of the validity of the Bible, I think one thing that they leave out, which is very interesting, is the accuracy to which it maps onto human experience, right? Because mostly we assess the Bible based on its divine claim, which is fine, because I think the central ethos of the Bible is that you have this divine being that came down. And so a lot of arguments against the validity of the Bible tends to poke holes at the discrepancies or inconsistencies within that divine claim. And the logic is, if this is such a divine book, then it mustn't have any errors, right? And the counter argument to that is you are looking at a divine perspective being captured by human beings, and that introduces like an element of flaws, I guess. But the other side to which I think we don't think about enough is like how accurately the Bible maps to the human condition. Because see, if you read the Bible, you see humanness at a degree that, again, I've not read any of that stuff. I've not read the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita. Is it Bhagavad Gita? Like, I've not read any of the other texts directly, right? I've read the Bible directly, but I've not read any of that text directly. I hope I get to the maturity to read them sometime. But I have consumed them second-handedly through like all the things that I watch and all the things that I study. And it's very clear that the Bible, my daughter is at the door, it's very clear that the Bible talks about the human experience in such a raw and honest way. And I'm like, okay, if you are making that thing up, you have to know the human condition at such a granular level to be able to create a story that is so accurate in how human beings behave, right? Throughout time. So I think that in itself is like a divine claim, it's an incredible claim if it's not divine, even if it's not divine. So I think one of the ways to assess the Bible may also just be the degree to which it captures the reality of humanness, in addition to its divine claims. I think that will provide like a more interesting view, because I think the strongest, most consistent parts of the Bible make a claim. Like the part that I don't need to justify or understand any deep theological arguments, just like human condition. I can see the human condition if I go to the Bible, which is why I think Ecclesiastes is a great book for anybody who is heavy-minded like myself. And if you consider yourself like a thinker and somebody who seeks the meaning in life, I think you should read Ecclesiastes. And I think you will find that the conclusion it makes is absolutely true, at least at 32, that's what I think. Maybe at 60, I'll have a different opinion. But yeah, it's an interesting predicament. And I just thought to capture it, share it, maybe you find it hopeful, maybe you find it useful. And if he stays for this long, I'm shocked. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Yeah. Cheers. Thanks for hanging.